Welcome to Let's Talk Petty. Remember, we are not petty, but we sure love talking about it.
Yes, we do. Kate.
I'm Kate.
I'm Andrew.
I am telling the story today.
And I have no clue who it's about.
No, you don't.
Kept this one 100% secret.
And I loved doing the research for this.
Are you going to tell me who?
I am, but I can't tell you my title yet. I can only tell you who it's about.
I can only hope that it's as good as your last title that you came up with.
Hey, you already said that I was given a pass on that one. I could have come up with a title, but you came up with a really good one with the rhinestone, so it doesn't matter.
All right, let's go
It
with
paid off, me not having a title on that
I'd like
last one.
just once for you to come up with a title.
I come up with a title all the time. That was the only one I did not come up with a title on. Oh, you want to hear it. But I'm not going to tell you my title because I have you guessing later on. And I don't want you to know what it is.
You're going to have me guess the title.
No, but it's going to give away a guess again, like I always do.
Okay.
My title gives away too much.
All right.
All right, so it is Stephen Clark versus Sterling Clark. Did you come across them in your research for any of the feuds, the petty feuds through history?
Nope.
So you don't know who these two are?
Nope.
All right, well, as always, I have a picture for you to look at. So that's Stephen Clark is first, and then Sterling Clark is on the right.
So Stephen Clark looks like...
I love these pictures of them.
It's an old-timey black and white picture.
Mm-hmm.
And he is sitting in a chair with his arms crossed, with his leg crossed over his other leg. Looks like... Can't tell if that's a pillow that's under his hand or if it's just his hand, super weird and deformed looking.
I think it's just his hand and it's just a weird angle.
And he looks like his mom just told him that he doesn't get any dessert.
Yep.
And Sterling Clark looks like he tried to dress up for a Civil War reenactment but got the uniform completely wrong.
And check out his, we talk about it, but I can't not talk about it right now.
His hat?
No, look at his mustache.
His mustache. Got it.
You see them?
He's got some grease in there for sure.
It's quite the mustache.
Mustachio grease.
So these are the two brothers that we are going to be talking about. In that picture you just looked at, the one of Stephen Clark, that is around 1898. And Sterling, that is about 1900.
Got it. 2 years apart.
Yep. Yes. So when he died in 1882, his net worth in stock and real estate was around $50 million. So that's like...
50 million more than I have.
It's like especially for back then. I mean, that's a crazy amount of money. So they had two other brothers for a total of 4. And all of them were very different people who all lived very different lives. I am going to give a little bit of background, only because some of the background in the grandfather's life ends up pertaining to their future feud. So
Okay.
It's going to set the basis for why this family is kind of the way that they are. All right, so they owned a ton of real estate in not only New York City, but in Cooperstown, New York.
Baseball Hall of Fame.
Yep,
My
by
favorite place in the world.
lies.
I've been there once.
They are actually the family who built the luxury apartment building the Dakota on Central Park West. Do you know what that's famous for?
It's where John Lennon lived and got shot.
It absolutely is. That was my next statement here. It's where they were living when he got murdered.
So they were living there at the time when John Lennon was there.
No, he was long dead by then. He actually died before it was even
But I thought you
built.
didn't you just say that they were living there when he got shot?
They're the family who built it.
Okay.
They did at different times live in an apartment there, but the grandfather, Edward, who is the one who commissioned this, he died before it was actually done. So the oldest son, he was also named Edward. He ended up living on a farm in Cooperstown. And he and his brother Ambrose, which I've decided I absolutely love that name. Ambrose. I love it. They preferred country life since they both loved horses. Edward was known as being gentle and not firm of mind or body.
We need to start a Rate Your Name podcast.
We should.
Just have people submit names, kind of like the Seinfeld episode where they were throwing names out. What else you got?
Well, I can't help
You have
it
a lot
that
of
we
strong
come along
opinions
with.
about people's names.
Well, there's a lot of cool names that you would think that we would have come across in all of our baby books and looking on websites and stuff for names. I don't remember ever seeing an Ambrose. I like it. Sterling, he is the second born. He was known as an adventurer who enjoyed traveling, and he eventually settled down in Paris, France. This left Stephen, the youngest brother, to run the family affairs, a job that he resented, as you could tell by that picture of him.
He's not too happy looking.
He was not happy being stuck with this job. And this added responsibility is what built the rift between the once close brothers. So this is where you can take a guess at what the brothers ended up becoming absolutely obsessed with, and they constantly competed with each other over. They competed over several things, but this was the main thing that they ended up competing over.
Baseball card collection.
No.
Sewing machines.
I think that Stephen would have been happy if Sterling had actually even cared about sewing machines. No, they loved to collect art. The more they could attain, the better. So that is what my title is. Oh, no, you don't. That painting's mine.
Way better than your last one.
It is way better because I actually even have a title this time.
That's one step ahead of where you were before.
It really is. So this obsession with collecting art was kind of fueled, not kind of, it absolutely was fueled by their father, Alfred, who many speculate was homosexual in a time when that sort of thing was not spoken of.
Rate the name 1 to 10, Alfred.
Don't like Alfred. Even with Batman, I don't like Alfred.
So
Not a fan.
1 to 10.
I don't know. The nickname Fred, I've never really liked. I don't know. I'd say like a 2.
If I was named Alfred, you'd call me Fred and not Al.
No, I'd probably call you Al. I like Al better than Fred.
It's weird that you went to Fred first because I don't know.
I grew up with a
I don't know
Fred.
of an Alfred that's ever been called Fred.
No,
I
grew
also
up with
don't
a
know
Fred.
an Alfred, so.
No. I don't know if I know an Alfred. I don't know. I'd have to think about it. But it was his love of art that got these two competing eventually. So Sterling was quirky, independent, and warm-hearted, known to speak his mind. Stephen was known as sensible and logical, the typical straight man to the eccentric man that all 80s movies based so many of their stories. I was looking at that, and like as I was going through the story, I was like, this is definitely where every 80s movie got their basis for the straight man versus the quirky man.
Based on my extensive and expansive movie
Yeah, you have
watching,
seen a lot of movies.
I would make that exact same comparison.
Well, good. I'm glad that we agree on this. So their grandfather, Edward, was an absolutely fascinating man whose rise to a successful businessman laid the foundation to many of the things we take for granted now. He was a high influence on the U.S. and Sterling and Stephen's lives. So, I mean, the basis of what he did in business is crazy. And obviously, I'm not going to go into it in here because it doesn't go with the petty, but it's a very interesting read. The stuff that we have now is basically thanks to their grandfather, which is just crazy when you learn all about it.
This recording equipment is thanks to their grandfather.
No.
This MacBook that we have in front of us.
No.
Coffee mugs.
Business-wise, not invention-wise.
You said everything, almost everything we have now.
No, all right. Let me rephrase that. A lot of the things that we have business-wise.
They're responsible for Zoom.
Business, not inventions. You can keep guessing inventions if you want, but it's not ever going to make it any difference that it was, or different that it was business-wise.
Business. I like it.
All right. So one interesting fact about him is due to how many patents there were on sewing machines, he was basically the one who started what is known as the sewing machine war. At one point, Edward was fighting over 20 other sewing manufacturers' lawsuits over patents at the same time. He prevailed because the man was a genius when it came to business, but it's funny to think that all this wealth came out of such a funny war. When I read sewing machine war, I just started laughing because I was picturing people out in a field throwing sewing machines at each other. That's instantly what came to my head. And they build these special cannons that they shoot sewing machines at each other.
Shoots the spools of thread at people.
Yeah, you tie up people with the spools of thread. I don't know. It was just funny. It made me laugh.
You can see him just dodging needles that are flying by their head.
To combat all the needles flying at them, people carry around giant pin cushions to catch them all. It's their shield instead of an actual shield.
They've got thimbles on all their fingers. Do you wear a thimble when you sew?
Yeah, sometimes I do.
I wasn't asking you. It was more of a general question.
Oh. Well, who is the general question to?
Do people wear thimbles when they sew?
Was that one of the questions that you would be asking in the sewing machine war?
No, it was just a general knowledge question.
Yes, people wear thimbles. That's why they were invented.
Did he invent them?
He's not an inventor. He is a businessman. So no, he did not.
Seems logical that he would have with the sewing machines.
Well, you're going to find out because his name is Clark. It's not Singer. So he is not the inventor of Singer sewing machines. So, but we're going to talk about him, the founder of the company and inventor of the Singer sewing machine, was quite a character and a little crazy petty himself. His name was Isaac Singer, and he had multiple mistresses and in total had 24 children.
That's a lot of kids.
It was a lot of kids. His lifestyle was a constant headache to Edward, who did not associate with Isaac outside of business situations due to his loose morals. So the way that they come together is all explained in the book, which I will talk about later. And if you want to learn about it, they can read it. All right, so the vast majority of consumers buying the Singer machines looked down on Isaac's lifestyle, which threatened the company's future.
So baby daddies were not very popular back then.
They were not very popular back then.
Because he is a lot of baby daddy.
He is a lot. And he was an imposing figure himself. He was just very tall, just a very large person with a very strong and loud personality.
Large, in charge, and lots of kids.
He really was. So he did not help matters of making himself look any better for the company. And it all came crashing down eventually in very soap opera style. I could not share the story. Again, because you kind of need to know his character because it comes into play later. So he had 2 separate houses in New York City for 2 of his mistresses, both named Mary. He had a thing for Marys. So everyone assumed Mary number 1 was Mrs. Singer since Isaac was estranged from his actual wife. At the house of Mary number 2, the couple were known as Mr. and Mrs. Matthews. I don't know why. I think he just liked it. It's so weird. So one day, Mary number 1 had had enough when she saw Singer out for a carriage drive as Mr. and Mrs. Matthews. And she started screaming at both of them, drawing a ton of attention to their already awkward situation. So even though all of this happened due to his own creation, like he put himself in this situation for this to happen, Singer is furious at Mary number 1 and proceeded to go to their house and then choked her unconscious because of it. And then her daughter, who's not his daughter, her oldest daughter, comes in, tries to stop it, and he chokes her unconscious as well. That's how he deals with the situation.
Thought you were going to say, and then he got her pregnant.
Oh my God. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised with how he is.
Did he say, did any of your readings say what his first name was for Mr. Matthews?
No, it did not. It just says Mr. and Mrs. Matthews. I'm assuming Isaac Matthews.
I'm going to assume that it was Matthew Matthews.
Matthew Matthews. Hi, I'm Matthew Matthews. It could be, and I hope it was. So Mary, number one, she gets the police involved, rightly so. But Singer, the way he deals with all this, oh, he flees to Europe, leaving behind his 16 children, because that's how many he had at this time, and their 4 mothers. So he had 18, but 2 died. But at this point in his life, he has 16. And not to mention the fact that he is leaving Edward behind to clean up this whole mess. So what Edward has to do is he persuades Singer to give up acting control of the company to save face while still owning 4/5 of the stock. So he's still going to be making money. He just does not want him out in the public anymore. But despite the fact that Singer created this whole fiasco and would not be in business, he would not be in business if it weren't for Edward. Like, Edward got him everything that he had. His wealth, everything, he owes it all to Edward. But instead of being like super grateful that this guy has helped him out and made him everything that he is, he pettily tells him, well, all right, fine. I won't be president of the company. I won't be the face of the company, but you can't be either until I'm dead. As long as I'm alive, you're not allowed to be president. I know, it blew my mind.
How old is he?
I was like, oh, wait, what? I reread the paragraph like twice to make sure I was understanding this correctly. Like, he made you what you are. Yeah, you invented it. But if he was not as good of a lawyer as he was and took the company in directions that he had, which, again, the book talks about, he would not be as wealthy as he was. Like, it blew my mind. And I don't know. It was crazy. So Edward agrees. He says, fine. But that whole situation and the way that Edward handled the whole affair with Singer, it's going to be the basis for the petty drama between the brothers in the future.
Okay.
Because their personalities are going to come into play. So their petty rivalry gave the U.S. one of the best collections of art in the world. Not to mention, both of them did a lot to help help people less fortunate as themselves. Many times their acts of charity were also petty driven, since they both seemed to always want to outdo the other. They had an appreciative eye for art and collected pieces that others ignored, like my favorite, Van Gogh. They're very interesting people. The whole family is crazy interesting.
They're already crazy interesting. We haven't even gotten to the crazy part yet.
I know. It's so funny. So Sterling, he is also a character, and at times he was eccentric and impulsive in his thoughts, similar to his grandfather's business partner, Isaac Singer. So he was an enigma of personality traits, being both warm-hearted and funny, but could be stern and cold at the drop of a hat. At one point in time, he had quite the handlebar mustache to boot, as you saw the beginning of it right there. His attitude towards those who perceived to have done him wrong was that no vengeance against them was too harsh. He was very much the type of person that once he thought of you as an enemy, there was nothing you could do to convince him otherwise, which I said is Petty Motto 101.
So there's no coming back. Once you have gotten under his skin, got him mad, got him upset, did something to him, there's no coming back from it.
There is no coming back from it. That's it. Once he reaches his breaking point, that's it.
So he's basically has people in his life, but when they do something wrong, so he's constantly having to meet new people, have new people in his life, because he's boxing out all these people out of his life.
You are basically just telling the future of his life from this point.
It's pretty easy to see that that's how it has to happen if that's your attitude.
Yep.
People like that, you're going to have a lot of people in your life over your lifetime because you kick too many people out.
Yep. That's exactly right. So both brothers served in the military and both went to college, but only Stephen would go on to be a lawyer and have a seat on the board for Singer and for the Metropolitan Museum of Art. So he made a huge impact on those roles when he was in there for Metropolitan and for Singer. And it would seem that Sterling was a tad jealous that he had not also been asked to be on the board for an art museum later on in life. So on top of all that, when his brother Reno died, that's the oldest one, the one that wasn't sound of mind or body. So he died a little bit younger.
Seems like he's more sane than him.
Pretty much.
Maybe they got the wrong diagnosis. The wrong person got diagnosed. They got him
He
mixed
wasn't
up.
sound in body, but he was perfect in mind. And so it was Sterling who was not sound in mind. Maybe.
They just gave them both to the older brother so that he could keep doing what he was doing.
Yeah. Well, the thing that Reno is known for is a hospital that he had started. It is called the Mary Imogen Bassett Hospital in Cooperstown. It is still running to this day, and it is significant for two reasons. The first, and most important, is my best friend and her husband worked there. Her husband worked there until just recently, since he was like 18 or something like that. It's pretty crazy.
Is there pictures of Singer all over the hospital?
I don't know. That's a good question. I should have asked. I mean, I would assume so. Not Singer. Clark's. Yeah. I would assume that the Clarks would be very, like, just everyone would probably put them up on a pedestal because they basically built it. And this hospital is also considered the first HMO in America. Health Maintenance Organization. It's pretty crazy. So the whole family basically built Cooperstown into what it became. And thanks to my research, I now know who I can blame for the many boring field family trips to what you said, the Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum. So thanks a lot, Stephen.
What'd you just say? The many field family trips?
Yes, the many field/family trips.
Field/family trips.
Field trips for school and family trips. What a boring place to be when you do not care about baseball. I've never been more bored out of my mind than on those field trips or family trips. Terrible. It was awful. I hated it.
I've been to Dollywood and the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Maybe I'm just basing all of these episodes around places you've been.
It sounds like it. Every week you do an episode.
Yeah.
Seems like it's somewhere that I've been.
Yeah. I don't know. I've been really, really searching hard just to make this happen. And now it's paying off.
It's weird because I've had all my old friends from school ask, just randomly texting me and messaging me, hey, why is your wife asking me about your past?
Yeah, because you talk to all your old school friends almost every day. So I'm not surprised that they're asking you about that at all. You definitely always keep in touch with your school friends. Name one school friend that you even can remember their full name. First and last name right now, go.
No, I can't. You know that.
Okay. That's what I thought. Anyway, so Stephen also married another well-to-do person and settled down after college. Sterling preferred to travel and have adventures, and he settled down in Paris. But he would not marry until his 40s, which also was a whole thing, which we talk about later. So the book, I'm going to mention it now just because we just talked about Cooperstown. The book is actually called The Clarks of Cooperstown. It is a very, 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 very thorough book. He literally lists every single painting that these two ever bought and when they acquired it. And during those parts, my eyes glazed over and I wanted to die. It was almost as boring as my field trips to Cooperstown. Baseball Hall of Fame. I was like, oh my God, this is all information I don't want. So I skipped a ton to all the nitty gritty parts, which I have now put into this. So if you don't want to read boring parts of a book, you're welcome. I'm going to tell you all about it.
We're into the nitty gritty.
We are. All right. So after their mother's death, it became clear that she was the glue that held the brothers together. So the four of them tried to maintain their relationship the same as it had been, having been close in their youth, especially Sterling and Stephen. But bitterness between Stephen and Sterling started to creep in, and then it ended up affecting the other brothers. It sucked them into their petty drama.
Which happens every time people get sucked into the petty.
It really does. It's sad how it ended up affecting the entire family. So while Sterling was off on his adventures, Stephen had to split their parents' pictures and furniture between the four sons. Now, while Sterling was off just living it up, like, okay, Stephen, go ahead, whatever. I don't care about our parents' paintings or furniture. Just split them. Like, I'm busy in China. I'm having an adventure. That was his whole attitude.
China?
Yeah, that's one of the adventures he went on. He did a whole expedition there. So he's off living it up. He did not care how this estate was split. But when he finally did decide he's going to settle down a little bit, he gets this house in Paris. All of a sudden, he's going to start questioning Stephen. Well, why did you split it this way? I don't think that it was fair. So he writes Stephen a letter to let him know, I don't think that you did this very fair.
Seems like the logical thing to do to a family member, write them a formal letter.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, we are in the 1800s, 1900s, so there's not a lot of like, I'm going to pick up the telephone and I'm going to call you. I'm going to tweet at you. Or I'm going to text you. There's none of that. So he writes him this letter, like I said, and this is where I'm going to say that the pettiness commences. Here is the beginning.
In the letter.
I mean, that's a petty thing, I think, to be worrying about, especially when you have as much money as these two have. Who cares? Is all I'm going to say. It stayed in the family. What do you care? Especially because he didn't care while he was on his adventure, and he left everything to Stephen to take care of.
Well, he's also got 6,000 kids he's got to think about paying for, and probably has all this alimony.
Not Sterling.
I'm so lost with him.
You're getting lost. Okay. Singer, he's dead. He is the inventor of the Singer sewing machine, right. Isaac Singer. He had 24 kids from his mistresses.
Got it.
But he's dead. He's long dead. These are his business partner, Edward Clark, who was also a millionaire because of all the work that he did. These are his grandchildren.
Can we just pretend he has 6,000 kids?
No, because Sterling never has children. So I'm sorry.
In my mind, he does. He's got 6,000 kids.
He has 6,000 kids, but no, he does not. All right, so he writes Stephen to let him know. And in response, Stephen writes to Sterling, and he says, well, then, I have two pictures that, quote, belonged to my mother, unquote, that don't
Why
really
did he
go.
Quote that?
Because that's literally what he said in the letter. I'm just saying basically what he said in my own words.
I thought he wrote the letter and then put quotations in the letter.
I'm putting this in my own words, but that is literally what he said in there. He said, belonged to my mother. You're writing your brother, you idiot. He said that don't really go with my house. So you can have them for your house in Paris. That's pretty nice, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you want to buy them for $6,750. And then
were they art pieces or were they like family pictures?
These are two art. Yeah, they always say pictures. They're talking about art that their parents had bought.
I thought it was just like a family picture of all them sitting in the field with matching clothes.
That's what I thought as first. I'm like, pictures? Like, oh, and they're talking about the R. Okay. So then he signs off, very sincerely yours, Stephen C. Clark.
I think we've talked about that before, how when people are friends, and I think, what was the episode where way back in the beginning where they were writing letters corresponding.
Wasn't it Houdini?
Houdini, yeah, and they would always write with very formal closings. Yes. They're good friends. Why would you even do that?
Well, this isn't even good friends. This is your brother.
Right, and this is even closer.
You grew up with. Like, what are you doing with your life? We're going to talk a little bit more. Butthead. Well, we're going to talk about a little bit more here. So let me read this next part, and then we're going to come back to this the way he signs his name. So this, of course, annoyed Sterling, who lamented that he didn't get as many paintings as he thought he should. Stephen's response was, well, we didn't think that you would have a house to put them in. This also did not make Stephen very happy, since why should he have gotten less just because he wanted a little adventure but was going to settle down later? So basically, he is like, he's off leaving Stephen holding the bag for everything. And in his head, Stephen should have known that eventually, even though there was no indication that he was going to settle down, that he was going to settle down, and he should have had the forethought to think of that. And how dare he?
He should have known that there would be a house that he would eventually own that would have walls that would be bare, that would need pictures on them. Mm-hmm. And the pictures from their family were what needed to be on his walls.
Right. So now we're at the point where
he should have known that he was going to have a brown couch and he wanted some light orange and some brown and the colors that
are
needed to
gonna
match. And then he was going to have a nice rug that kind of brought out the colors in the picture also.
Yep. He should have thought of that when he was holding the bag for everything. Business, estate, all of it. He should have thought of this.
If he wasn't thinking about him, what was he doing?
Exactly. Being selfish. So now he's decorating his house, like you said. And these items that didn't really matter much to him before, all of a sudden they matter very much. It became very clear over the years that art was a currency for the whole Clark family, but especially these two brothers. These paintings that had already been in the family also carried the family spirit, so they meant more to Sterling. And if there is anything that can fuel the petty flames, it's family sentiment. So Sterling felt that it was important for everyone in the family to be happy. All of a sudden, this is what he's concerned with. And Stephen clearly missed that point, which I think is just so funny. Again, you left him holding the bag. So during this time, Sterling became obsessed over making sure that their older brother was looked after. That's what he would write about often. And how the paintings had been distributed. Like, these were his two main focuses. So he also felt that Stephen's wife, Susan, did not want him around, and he harped on this subject to the point that Stephen asked him to basically leave the matter alone. Like, just stop talking about it, stop bringing it up. But again, main focus always on these paintings, saying that he felt Stephen had taken advantage of being the one to split the estate, not to mention that all of the jewels that he had given their mother had ended up going to Stephen's wife and to Brose's. They always called Ambrose Brose. All of those jewels went to Susan and Florence, who is Ambrose's wife. So would it have been so much to ask that Sterling get at least one good portrait? That was what his focus was.
I think I made a life decision listening to this.
Okay.
I'm going to become a vagabond.
Okay.
I hate to leave you guys, but I'm going to be a vagrant vagabond, just wander around for the next...
Well, he wasn't a vagabond.
Well, I'm going to be.
Oh, okay.
So for the next however many years, no one's going to hear from me.
Okay.
And I'm just going to live my best life.
Yeah.
But when my parents die,
yes,
I'm going to let my brother sort all their artwork out. Okay. And then I'm just going to reappear and I'm going to get mad at everybody.
Yes.
For not saving me the ones that I want.
Even though you never specified which ones you want.
Correct.
Yes, I like this plan. I am behind this plan 100%. It will only work out well.
This was just a trick to see if you actually wanted me around. So now I know the truth.
Yeah, you can go on. Go on, live your vagabond life, you.
It'll pay off later when we have all this art.
That is true. When you complain enough that your brother's like, fine, here, take the art.
A lot of similarities could be here.
There could be a lot of similarities. Minus the fact that we will be still poor. We will not be undecidedly wealthy. It's not going to happen. All right. So while he was making a big fuss about the whole thing, he would do what he always did at this time by then saying he didn't want a few paintings to come between them. And don't take all this to heart. That's what he would say to Stephen. And he's also signing his letters affectionately and then his name. And he would always spell affectionately wrong. He would always spell it
E-F?
Yes. Affectionately. Like the effect. Effect. And no matter how many times people corrected him, he did not care. He always used affectionately.
Let me guess. So this reminds me of a conversation I had today with our daughter.
Uh-huh.
She was texting and she wrote apart, but didn't mean like apart from something. She meant a part of something. Not so you know the difference. It was supposed to be a space
a part.
Part.
Yes.
And her excuse was, well, I'm just texting really fast and I don't want to change it, but you can read it and know what I mean. So maybe he was writing these letters without even looking at the paper. And he just didn't care. He's like, you know what I mean.
You know what I mean. EA, whatever.
So he just wasn't even looking at the paper. He was writing all of these letters. I can picture him sitting at his desk with a candle lit or propane gas light, whatever they had there. And he's just sitting there looking out the window, writing a letter. And he wrote affectionately, but every single time he wrote an E, but it actually was an A, but he just didn't feel like erasing it.
I think you figured out why he always did it. We have come to the bottom of it, like we always do. But my whole thing is, if it's really not that big of a deal, why are you even bringing it up? If you don't want a few paintings to come between you and your brother, what are you doing?
What are you doing with your life that you're letting that get between you anyway? It's 2 paintings.
No,
You could
it's
go
more
buy
than 2
more
paintings. But you have a ton of money. And if you really wanted the paintings because of sentimental reasons, why would you not just say to your brother, hey, I really, really miss mom and dad. I really enjoyed these paintings in my house. What are the odds that I know I was off, leaving you holding the bag, and I am so sorry for that. Thank you so much. Can I please have these paintings?
That's one way he could go.
That's one mature way, but we don't do that.
The other way he could go, since he has lots of money, is he's already petty.
Yeah.
And probably knows it, probably thrives on it. So what he should have done, I probably should save this for the round table, but I'm not going to because I'll probably forget it by then. But what he should do is he should commission a painting of the paintings that he wants and have his brother drawn into them and have stink lines coming from his head.
Oh my God. I'm picturing him commissioning this artist who's like so serious and just so happy he has a job.
He's like, you want what lines? Stink?
And he waits till the painting is all done. And the artist is so proud of himself because he did such a good job replicating this. And then he's like, this is what I want. And he does, like, he shows him his own terrible drawing of what he wants his
with
brother to
stink
look.
lines coming out of him.
That's really funny. And then he hangs it up on the wall and stands back looking at it, just admiring.
And he titles it #stinklines. It's got a gold, like a brass nameplate on it.
Take that,
#stinklines.
Steven.
Yeah, I couldn't save that one.
All right. I like that. That was very funny. All right. So Steven, he's never as warm in his responses. So he responds to one letter by saying, Dear Robert, I wish to acknowledge the receipt of your letter of April 4th in reference to the division of the pictures belonging to my mother.
So he basically old school changed his where the iMessages says read.
Yeah.
He basically did it old school and says, I acknowledge
the letter you wrote. And he always would say the pictures belonging to my mother or my mother's estate. Like, just trying to let Steven know, I have done everything here. You have done nothing.
So basically he's indicating to him that they're not even really a family anymore. It's just a business transaction. He's dealing with a business associate.
Pretty much. Just very cold. Because when their father died, Stephen was only 16. And so he was very close to his mother. And he ended up being the one who was like the main person in her life, taking care of her. And even when she remarried, he was a huge part of her life. So this was definitely his way of being like, I was there for her. You were not. So my mother is what he's letting him know. And then again, he would always sign these letters. Very sincerely yours, Stephen C. Clark.
Did he spell very VARY?
No. He was an editor of a newspaper as well. So he was very into.
So he probably wrote affectionately on purpose with the E just because he was a
Definitely.
newspaper editor?
He
just to annoy
definitely
him?
did that to annoy him. And it's funny that you say that because it's something that we're going to talk about again. So you'll know what I'm talking about when we get there. So he never left off the middle initial or his last name in these letters, always with that middle initial. And then Stephen was also petty in his style of being, quote unquote, helpful. He wrote Sterling and told him, this is what we're going to talk about now, that he should write up some articles about the trips he takes because he had great powers of observation, but his literary style might not be very good to begin with, but that could be easily fixed up and put in presentable form. So that was his way of letting him know, like,
your writing's crap.
You can't write well, and oh, look at that spelling. And it was also his way of letting him know that even though Sterling was the older brother, Stephen very much viewed himself as the adult in the relationship because he was, again, left behind to care for everything. So he wanted Sterling to recognize this fact and the burdens he had taken on. But he never did. Sterling never said, hey, thanks for always taking care of Mom and the business that makes us our millions of dollars every single year and taking care of the estate, because I was off having a very good time and our brothers never wanted to help you. Nope, never once said thank you. But even when Stephen would like do this stuff or pointing out the ridiculous stuff or saying like what he said, like, oh, your writing's not that great. At first, he's just like, whatever. He's taking it in stride. He just wants everyone to be happy. At this point, Sterling's very much just let's all get along kind of a thing. We might have these disagreements. We might go back and forth, but I want us to get along. But his brother never, ever reciprocated that. If there's a problem brewing, what Stephen would do, or Sterling would do, was write to his brother and say, I'm trying to come across as brotherly as possible. And Stephen never acknowledged that. It was like, if you're not going to acknowledge all of the stuff that I've taken care of, I'm not acknowledging your brotherly love. That's it. So that's where they are here.
And are they both in the United States right now?
No, this is where Sterling has settled down and he's in his house in Paris.
He's still in Paris.
He's
so he
still
never
in Paris
came
at
back.
this point. Oh, yeah, we'll talk about it.
Got it. Never fails.
It's all right. We ask good questions because we want to know. So when Stephen was writing these letters, he is more to the point. And at one point, he suggests that Sterling needs to go ahead and get married. But he would also give unsolicited petty advice. When he told him he should get married, this is the advice that he put in there. He says, the so-called intellectual woman is to be avoided like the plague because they are never really intellectual at all. That was his advice on who Stephen should marry. Or Sterling should marry, I mean.
Just marry a dumb broad because that's all they're for.
So Sterling said, oh, I don't have the time to get married. But by that time, he had for about a year been living with an actress and supporting her. But of course, he does not share this with his brother because he knew he would disapprove. So in turn, Sterling would later insist that Stephen's wife, Susan, had too much control over him. So he's pettily saying, oh, okay, this is what you think about intellectual women. Well, all at the same time, your wife controls you so much. And then years later, across the top of the letter, I just quoted, Sterling wrote, so he went back and read this letter and he puts, quite remarkable, Stephen's ideas on married life and intellectual women, August 30th, 1911. So that's when the letter was written. And then he says, remarkable what a change has taken place in his mind to date, February 3rd, 1924. So that many years later. So in 1924, he went back, got that letter out, and wrote his thoughts across the top. That's how annoyed he is with Stephen.
What type of a person saves those letters like that?
Well, at that time, you got to think old, honey. People kept letters. They kept correspondences. That's what they did. That's a lot of people. That's just how they did.
That is incredibly strange to 10 years later to go back and write notes on the letters that you get.
It's so weird. So weird. But in 1911, when that letter was written, Sterling, he is still optimistic, and he tried to do things for Stephen and Susan, always sending gifts for their children and attempting to surprise Susan with renovating her boudoir. But unfortunately, the pair would reject this offer since Sterling's tastes were very different from their own. So he's trying to do nice stuff, and they're just like, "Ugh, that's okay. Thank you, brother." So Sterling was relentless when it came to how the items in his mother's house were split among the four brothers, often acting as his two older brothers' protector against Stephen, insisting that the other two get first pick of items. And if there was an item no one really wanted, Sterling would insist it didn't get sold because it had sentimental value. For instance, a table lamp that their mother had always used. Like, that was his reason. Like, no, don't sell that. Mother always used that lamp. I'm just picturing that, like, any item they hold up, like
it's
a
basically
glass.
everything in the house
Pretty
their mother's
much.
touched. How do you even differentiate
She always drank
that?
water out of that glass. No, not that one. That was her juice glass. Like, you can't. Yeah. So at this point, he's just also just petty, like holding up the estate, getting taken care of in a timely manner.
Do you think he said that about her bedpan that she probably had on the side of the bed? Didn't they use those back then? Yes. No, that's mother's bedpan. I would like to urinate in that someday myself.
We can't go without that. So he's not getting the paintings he desired in the estate. So this is what ends up turning him into an obsessed art collector. He would go to great lengths to get as many pieces as he could. And not being satisfied with that, he ended up swapping land and a house in Cooperstown with his brother Ambrose for one of the paintings he had received. And then he got another piece from his oldest brother Reno, which is probably why he had been so insistent that the two of them get their pick of paintings, since he knew they would negotiate with him and Stephen would not. So he was basically being petty even with that. Like, what he was doing was just maneuvering people to still eventually get what he knew he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's so crazy. So he's basically playing the pettiest chess match in the entire world to get what he wants.
Using everybody as a pawn.
Yes.
But can we take a time out?
Yes.
Because I just heard another person's name, Reno.
Reno is the nickname for the oldest brother.
Oh, it's just a nickname, not
It's
the
just
actual name.
Yeah, because his name was Edward, like the grandfather who was super wealthy and left them all the riches.
But let's just assume his name was Reno.
Okay.
Rate the brothers' names in order that you like them.
Well, I don't like Brose as a nickname either.
Right, full names.
Well, obviously Ambrose is first.
Full names except for Reno, because Reno's going to be Reno.
Okay. Reno is last, obviously. I like the name Sterling. So it's Ambrose, Sterling,
better
Stephen.
than Reno?
Yes. And then Reno. Reno reminds me of Rectum. I don't know why.
That's weird.
I know, but every time
there's literally a Reno city.
I know. But it's spelled Rino, and I don't know.
So it doesn't remind you of a rhino. It reminds you of a rectal exam.
Yes, and I don't know why. Every time when I was reading the book, I was like, I don't like this name. I don't like this name at all. Listen, I don't know where my brain goes, where it goes sometimes, but
we're starting to figure out where.
Weird places. So even though Sterling, he is collecting all these paintings, he really doesn't want to hoard these paintings for himself. Instead, he is pretty much collecting everything so that he can share his joy of art. He wanted to set up a museum in Cooperstown, but you are never going to guess who disagreed with that.
The Baseball Hall of Fame.
No, it didn't exist at this time. It was Stephen. He says, no, you should set up a museum in New York City. So despite the disagreement of where the museum should be, both brothers agreed that it was necessary, and so they met in Paris to discuss it. The brothers decided to reach out to an old family friend to help them collect pieces. Surprise, surprise. Again, you're never going to guess this. But the two brothers ended up at each other's throats over what art should be collected. Can you believe this?
Why don't they just go their separate ways and be done with each other? It sounds so exhausting.
Because then what else would they do? This is their life.
Collect art and just do their own thing.
Nope. They cannot. So Sterling here would be the one to take his turn at being condescending to Stephen, often giving him unsolicited advice on what pieces he collected. He would basically tell Stephen he was being duped by their family friend, spending too much money on pieces not worth it, and he wasn't buying the right art. Stephen started to take great joy when Stephen made a mistake or lost money. At first, he was trying to be a good big brother and advise him to be more careful, but when Stephen rejected his advice, he would enjoy his brother's losses. So, you do not like my advice and you won't take any of it? Ha ha, now I'm going to laugh at you, was his mentality.
I mean, I feel like that's what brothers and siblings would normally do anyway.
Yeah, that's kind of true. But I don't think you have to be mean about it. I mean,
sometimes.
Me and my brother give each other advice all the time, and if we don't listen, we're just like, okay. We might be like, I can't believe you didn't listen to me later on, but it has never turned into something like this. So, not yet. Maybe when we get older. I'll cross my fingers on that one.
You'll be arguing over your parents' art.
Now I'm going to make my mom buy art. Be like, come on, Mom, buy all the art pieces you can.
And then die. So we can fight about it.
Oh, my God. All right. So they, at this point, because of everything going on, they just stopped communicating with each other about art. But Sterling still, whenever he has the chance, he makes sure that everybody knows his opinions about his brother and what his brother is doing. So this is also laying the groundwork for the petty race the two had to acquire art before the other one. There's actually a story of how one brother heard another brother was going to buy a painting, so they rushed to acquire it before the other could, even though they didn't even really like the painting. It's so funny.
I wish you had stopped your sentence at the big race and they'd actually raced each other.
I could actually see them, though.
Whoever wins this race gets to buy the art.
I gotta get there first. And then they spot each other across the street and they just start walking faster while they keep glancing at each other, walking faster and faster and faster until they're in a dead sprint running to this painting. So dumb.
And then the art store's closed and they have to walk back home in shame.
They're rich enough they'd end up somehow getting a hold of the owner and making them come and open the place. I swear. It's crazy how rich these two are. So the silliest part about it is that deep down, both brothers had the equal goal of acquiring art for later generations to enjoy. So you would think that would squelch the petty, but instead somehow it fueled it.
Because they want to be recognized.
Yes,
for it.
Exactly. Because they wanted to make sure that their name was on it. So both wanted to get art that they deemed worthy for others to see instead of just listening to the art dealers of the time who just told all the rich people what to buy, which is why their collections are so unique and special because of the way that both of them viewed art and because they had such different tastes. It is crazy. Like they really did end up contributing so much to art getting preserved that probably would not have been preserved because people just at that time did not appreciate it. So it's just crazy with how like-minded they were that they were just so dumb and so split on this. They could have accomplished so much more if they were both just like, cool, that's your style and this is my style. If we combine those, think of all the art we could get. But they did the exact opposite.
It's like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos.
Yes.
Imagine what we could do if we worked together.
But they did not. So the funniest part about this whole thing is that Sterling, he kept this diary and he would basically just use this to lash out at people, his brothers and people who he felt wronged him.
Well, it's nice he's moved on from letters to an actual
Well,
diary.
I think he was doing both. I think he would write letters and he had this diary. So remember that woman that I mentioned that he was living with? He didn't want to tell his brother, but he'd been living with her. She was an actress. Well, he had
Turned
the
out
audacity.
to be Betty White.
I was going to say no, Betty White's not old enough, but I think she was born in 1920 something?
Mm-hmm.
So she was alive. She would have been reading about some of the stuff that we're going to talk about later. That is so crazy. I wish he had freaking married Betty White. But honestly, he doesn't deserve Betty White. So.
Wouldn't she have been really young, though?
When
was all this happening?
He could have been older. I mean, this was when this is as they went through their life. I mean, they didn't die until the 1950s.
Oh, so this is probably the 30s and 40s.
Yeah, I think in the between the 1900s and the 1950s is pretty much this whole timeline for when their petty really started to ramp it up.
Could have married her at the end of his life.
He could have. I mean, people marry younger people all the time. But anyway, he had the audacity to marry this woman. Her name was Francine Clary. And despite the fact that she was an illegitimate child, a former actress who also in turn had an illegitimate child of her own when he was 42 years old. How could he marry that?
Seems like illegitimate children are the theme.
Yep. No, that's not something that is on the level of Isaac Singer. And is not a well-respected, God-fearing Clark. And so he was looked down on for that.
Duplicitous.
So at this time, they go ahead and they move to New York together, and they have a house in New York City and in Cooperstown. So now that Clark is living closer, Sterling is living closer, the brothers would go to galleries and such together. On these trips, Sterling would constantly still be condescending to his younger brother about either the choices he made or over the fact that he would get his wife's opinion over what pieces to buy. In the end, Stephen's collection ended up being just as impressive as Sterling. They just had different tastes, like I said. So Sterling would also get very annoyed when Stephen listened to anyone other than himself, since he deemed his opinion was the right one and hence the only one that mattered. The thing that seemed to annoy him the most is when Stephen chose to listen to his wife over him, which is where the petty really comes into play. Sterling assumed so many things without looking at the bigger picture. To him, Stephen was not listening to everything he said, and that was a sign of disrespect. He was the older of the two, so I guess in his mind that trumped any opinion his sister-in-law had, or anyone else for that matter. So it's so crazy to think they both have these preconceived ideas that they want the other one to acknowledge, but neither of them say it to each other. Stephen wants his respect and his thanks for taking care of stuff that, as the oldest, because Edward was the oldest, but because he wasn't sound of mind and body, that fell on Sterling. He should have done this, but it ended up falling to the youngest, never would say it. And then Sterling still wanted Stephen's respect because he was the oldest, but did nothing to get it. It's so dumb and so petty.
If anybody needed to talk to a family therapist in a group session, it's these two.
Yes. And there's so much more of in their past that they
obviously, if they're still going at each other like this
Yes.
late in life over stupid things, there's obviously a lot more there.
So crazy. So you throw into this mix of those feelings, their inheritance, and what was to become of it after they had died, and you're going to get a petty mess. So this is all so crazy. So this all started when Sterling's wife, Francine, told him that Stephen's wife, Susan, was worried he was spending all his money. Because remember, he is buying a crap ton of paintings. He is just dead set on getting as many paintings as he can get. And
She's
they
a
are
gold
very
digger
expensive.
and is afraid her money's going to dry up.
Thank you. Francine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So he has no children. Sterling has no children. So if he died the way that their trust is written up and the will is written up, the bulk of his fortune is going to go to Stephen and Susan's children because all of them are all taken care of. So this is basically setting up the next generation of kids. So they're going to get all of this. With how much he is spending on art, this would leave less for their children, and this is the reason Francine gave for her concern. So this is the story she tells him. This makes Sterling beyond annoyed because he thought it completely unfair that his wife and stepdaughter shouldn't receive his inheritance when he died. Like you said, he didn't seem to notice what I instantly noticed, that maybe Francine was riling him up to get exactly, or to do exactly that. Leave her and her daughter his fortune. Like, it did not even come across. Like, he just instantly went off, like flew off the handle with that. I'm furious you're not getting my money. While she's like behind him rubbing his hands or her hands like, yes, excellent. She was Mr. Burns behind him, definitely. Like, my plan is working.
It's mind-boggling that people don't see that. When you were telling me that.
Yeah,
like,
before I could even get the rest of it out.
Before your sentence was done, I was like, oh, she's looking for his money.
Yes. It's so, and not only that, but he doesn't even check to see, wait a minute, I'm going to ask some questions. Did Susan even say this in the first place? Because, again, this family is so wealthy. It is insane. They don't need you to leave their children money. Your extra millions on top of the millions they already have, which would eventually be billions, not going to make that much of a difference. They don't need that money. But he does not think that at all. So instead, he starts to think that his younger brother was thinking of only his children. That's it. He's all about his family. And then he also starts to turn on his trustees. He accuses them of being more concerned with the Singer Manufacturing Company than for the Clark heirs, which they kind of sort of need to, because that's how the Clark heirs make their money. But whatever. I mean, just the older he gets, you're going to see like the crazy just starts escalating to it's just insane. So in 1923, he tried to get his brothers Ambrose and Edward to join him in gaining more control over their trusts. He hired a lawyer as well, but did not tell Stephen about his plans. So on June 15th, the two met to discuss the matters, and it did not go well. So finally, he's telling his brother about it, but it's kind of like he's surprising him with this whole thing. So during this meeting, things are not going his way. Sterling, he gets super mad and he gets up to leave. So as he's leaving, before he can go anywhere, Stephen says to him that while he had the right to consult anyone, it was disgusting of Sterling to sneak around behind his back. So guess what Sterling's response is to what Spencer says to him? Stephen says to him.
Suck it.
Nope. He punches him in the mouth.
Same thing.
And when he does this, Stephen goes into a fury and just starts hitting Sterling so much that he knocks him to the ground with blood all over his face.
So this room is bloodied.
This is bloodied. Again, these two have.
And it's all over a picture.
The whole basis of this is pictures in their parents' estate. All of this petty drama, that is where it all started. Well, it all started because Stephen was stuck with running the family. But
yeah, I think I'm going to change my mind and I'm just going to live my normal life, because I don't think I can get down to this level.
You're just saying that because you don't want your brother to continually punch you in the face until you're bloody on the ground, because obviously your story is going to follow their story almost perfectly.
It does worry me.
You're like, wait, a bloody face? Oh, I don't know about this. So Sterling's reaction to this is he takes his accounts from the managing firm that the whole family uses. He ends up filing another lawsuit to contest the taxability of his stock dividends. He does not win. This makes him even angrier at his brothers because he felt if they had joined him in this lawsuit, then they would have won. because and he probably is right. If they had all combined forces, they probably would have won. But this is not a battle that they want to fight. It's not worth it to them. So all of these uneasy feelings, they're catching up to all the brothers. So in 1927, Sterling was determined more than ever to gain control away from his trust so he could leave his fortune to his wife. So he goes and he does another lawsuit. This time it's against the president of the Singer Company, his brothers, and their children. So he is
bringing the children in.
Yes, because remember the way that it's set up, the children are the ones inheriting everything if he were to die. So they're included in this suit. But this is just another lawsuit and another loss since the court again ruled against him. So that's it. This left Sterling so bitter and angry, he never speaks to his family again. From that day forward.
Finally.
He never speaks to it. So this is the once peacemaker of the family. He starts referring to his brothers as dear charming brothers with great sarcasm. In 1929, a lawyer contacted him and said his brothers would like nothing so much as a reconciliation. His reply was one word, and I want you to guess what it is.
Nope.
No. One more guess.
Let's see. We're in the early 1900s.
Mm-hmm. Which makes it even funnier.
Man, there's so many good words. I don't know.
All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
Balls.
Yep. That is an early 1900s phrase.
Oh, man. All right, so then that same year.
I wish people still said that.
I know. Balls.
There's so many great things that people used to say. Words and phrases.
I think I just like it so much. Picturing these lawyers who are probably very dignified, all in their little get-ups, having to go back and tell his brothers, he said balls. I think that's probably the best part about it. And you know that it would have been like this long drawn out thing just to have these guys have to say the word balls. Like they're too dignified for these words to leave their mouth. So it makes it even funnier. But anyway, so the brothers, they don't give up. They come up with another solution, but he rejects this well. At this point, he just wants to sever all ties. So friends, they're starting to tell him, you know what? Ever since this happened, you're sadder. This break isn't good for you. We really think it's in your best interest to make amends. His reply was that he not only wanted vengeance, but he says, may God curse them all for their double dealing with a trusting man like myself, and may I see them suffer morally and materially.
Morally would have been bad, but materially, that crossed the line.
Over like kind of a situation that he created. If you hadn't been such a wanker about the estate, this would not have happened. Or if you hadn't ran off and not helped your brother, then this wouldn't have happened, I guess. Like, you put yourself in this situation. Who are you blaming here?
But ultimately, it shows where his mind was, because it could have just been, I hope my family falls apart. But he had to throw in materially. So all he cared about was money. Oh,
and there's other stuff that it's funny you say that, because you really have figured this family out right from the start. So the one he blames the most, obviously, is that swine and treacherous sneak Stephen. He convinced himself of things he could not prove, choosing to believe that Stephen was out to get him. An entry in his diary in 1929 says, I trusted Stephen as a brother and friend and never suspected him once, as he had the same fortune as myself and was always harping on all having too much money. May God curse him on earth as well as in heaven. This guy is just...
He's got a lot of spite. He is full of spite.
And, of course, he does not leave his other brothers out of his rage writing. So remember, he was so worried about his brother Reno, right? Everybody needs to take care of him. Here he says, I don't know if I can even read it without laughing, but so he writes, Reno impotent. Likely to off from apoplexy. So he goes from really caring about his brother to, he's impotent. He's going to die from apoplexy. I was like, wow, this guy is harsh. So then he says, Bruce, likely to die from drink. Bruce used to look 10 years younger than I did. Now people always say with surprise, why I always thought Bruce was older than you are. People said Bruce drank like hell. This guy in his petty writing is just, I'm not going to lie though, I loved reading it. I loved it. It's so dumb.
It's incredibly
It's just so
petty,
petty.
childish.
So petty and childish. So Edward did die younger, but Ambrose outlived all the brothers. So his diary it didn't come true. He didn't die from the drink. From reading his diary entries, Sterling seemed to have depression, which would account for some of his constant mood swings. Mm-hmm. His way to deal with his feelings of the blues was to constantly be busy renovating houses, traveling, or buying things. And then to fill up his time, because again, his family's out of his life, he starts buying horses for horse racing, which is crazy. He actually was very successful with it too.
That is crazy.
It's just weird.
Nothing in this whole story is crazier than him buying horses.
Well, kind of weird. He went from it just shows how much he would jump, because they did always grow up with horses, but his interest was never much in horses. But then all of a sudden one day he's like, I'm going to buy some horses and then I'm going to race them. And then, of course, again, he's very successful at doing it. So Stephen and Sterling were alike in the need to help others and not hoard their wealth. The whole family is like this. It's actually incredible. They are an incredible family. All of the stuff that they've done for people it's really nice to see people who have so much wealth and do as much as they can with it, because they know it doesn't matter. At a certain point, when you have a certain amount of money, like, it does not matter. Give it away. Hint, hint to all the people who are super wealthy and don't want to share their wealth. So Sterling had great disdain for those who didn't help others when they could. So he would not have liked Elon Musk.
But if they share their wealth, then someone will be richer than them.
I know, but that's a nice plane flying over.
It is.
It sounds like a in my ear with the headphones on.
That was loud.
It was very loud.
And they're coming back for another swing.
It's probably the, whatchamacallits, Blue Angels.
Yeah.
You can always tell when they start practicing because our house shakes.
We didn't get a shake on that one, though.
No.
But it's very loud.
Or like that time when they, somebody, I don't know which one, somebody hit some sort of level they should not have hit in that humongous boom. Mm-hmm. That was super scary, and everybody comes running out of their houses and looking around like, oh my God, we're gonna die.
No, just a normal day.
Oh no, it's just the Blue Angels again. Oh, okay, cool. People go to see them in the shows. We don't have to. We just see them. We just go out of our house and look up. It's great. Anyway, so yeah, Sterling would not have liked Elon Musk. He would not have liked Bezos at all. He would have had great disdain for them. Most of all, he hated how much he had to pay in tax, wanting to sell his house in Cooperstown because it would save him on taxes, but mostly to annoy his brothers. That was his main reason for wanting to do this.
Some things never change.
It really does not. So Sterling became obsessed with overturning Roosevelt. This whole story that I came across is not only petty, but insane, and something I never knew about. Are you ready to hear this?
I am now.
Okay. So he paid a great deal of money to his opposing party and took to calling him Rosenfart.
Just when you think it couldn't get any more petty and childish, he comes up with a Rosenfart.
Petty people love their nicknames. So all his talk would end up blowing up in his face when he was accused of being part of a plot to overthrow the government and set up a fascist dictator in place of Roosevelt. This actually made national news, and everyone involved, including men from the NRA, J.P. Morgan, and Murphy and Company, were accused of putting up the funds of $3 million to force Roosevelt out of office. This led to a House committee being conducted between April 26th to December 29th, 1934. They talked to hundreds of witnesses and accumulated over 4,300 pages. Tell me if this sounds like anything new.
It's almost like you're reading the news of what's happening.
Thank you.
Over
It
the
is
last
so
year
crazy.
and a half and right now.
So the people backing this coup felt like Roosevelt's New Deal was creeping socialism and was dedicated to destroying the nation's capitalist economy. If FDR wasn't stopped, he would lead them to be just like Russia. It's so crazy. I was like, wait a second. Am I accidentally reading the news? And they put in FDR. I'm so confused. What's going on here? Oh, wait, no, that's just history repeating itself because history always repeats itself.
Never comes up with anything new.
So at the time, this was huge news. Like, this was a big deal. Sterling's getting accused because he said he would put up $15 million to back this rebellion. His name was brought up again and again. But not once did he write about this in his diary. Instead, while all of this is going on, he does write about Rosenfart, always writing Rosenfart, never writing Roosevelt. He writes about the media.
So cringy when people do that.
Yeah, and again, fake news, just so you know. The media, fake news.
I will give him credit, though, for not writing it in his diary. Because of all the things we're hearing now about people with their text messages and everything else.
Yes,
they leave a trail, but at least he didn't leave a trail in his diary for people to read.
No, but you could write like, okay, to me, if you were not guilty of this, your diary would say, like, what in the world? I can't believe I'm getting accused of this. And with how he was with people when he felt like he had been wronged, he would have written in detail about this. So either somebody in the family took care to, if he did write about it, they took it out. If it was incriminating information in there, like they either altered what he had, because again, this is a very wealthy family, so they could do that, or he just didn't write about it because he's freaking guilty as hell and doesn't want people to know. But I feel like if he had been wronged, they would have left it because he would be like, can you believe the audacity of this? So, I mean, basically the whole study comes out like, yeah, there was a coup to overthrow the government. And very wealthy people were very scared of losing what they had and didn't want to. It's insane. It is literally just like now. It's so funny. Just so funny how much history is like that. But anyway, the thing he writes about most in his diary, while all this is going on, is his brothers and their wives. He wrote about how Susan was upset about her diminishing beauty and how it delighted him. In another entry, he was hopeful that Stephen had not paid his income tax and would have to go before a congressional committee, which is funny.
Dear diary. Did you see Susan today? She is really losing it with age. She used to look sort of nice.
And
but
she's
now
so upset
she's
about
losing it. She's really ugly. It makes me happy. Nothing makes me happier. Till tomorrow. XOXO.
Exactly. So how, like what a 14-year-old girl would write. That this girl I hate doesn't look good anymore. Ah ha ha ha. When he wrote about his family in later years, it was with just as much vengeance as when their fallout had first happened.
Do you think at any point in his life, at any point in his life, when you said 14-year-old girl, it reminded me of yearbooks and how people used to draw mustaches and dumb things.
Oh my God.
Do you think at any point he had pictures of his family and he just drew mustaches on them and wrote ugly, loser, fat, impotent?
Absolutely could see him doing that. I would not put anything past him. I'm not going to put anything past him. I would not be surprised if somewhere in his house he had that. And it made him feel so good to flip through this like little book he made of it. I could totally see that. So he has this entry in 1944. So he's writing about an incident that happened 21 years ago. He says Stephen, is a swine of the deepest dye, and Susan is worse, if anything.
Not to mention she's ugly.
So stupid. And then he accuses them of being jealous because his wife was too good looking and too attractive. So just a few months after writing this, the two couples just happened to end up in the same restaurant and sat right next to each other. Neither would acknowledge the other, and Francine made fun of how Stephen and Susan had aged, making sure to tell Sterling that Stephen, although younger, looked so much older than him. Sterling loved Francine's comments so much that he wrote them down verbatim in his diary. All right, so there's a bunch of other little petty things that happen between the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to skip to 1952. Stephen's son, Robert, died at the age of 34. Now, even Sterling, he can't ignore that this must have hurt his brother. So him and Francine sent a telegram and flowers to Stephen. In response, Stephen, who was now...
it a singing telegram?
It was not. I know
I've
that.
lost interest.
It should have been. Stephen, who was now 70, wrote to the 75-year-old Sterling a very honest and emotional letter telling him all about his son's death. He said he wished that Sterling could have been there. Then he ended the letter with this underlined sentence, all of which goes to show how transitory life is and how trivial are so many of the things we strive and struggle and fight about. Even with Stephen finally showing some emotion, it was too late. Sterling died in 1956, never making amends with his family. When he died, guess how much his estate was worth, despite the fact that this man spent money however he wanted. If he wanted something, he bought it. He bought paintings that sometimes went to $200,000. And he gave away a crap ton of money.
Let's go with $1.3 billion.
Maybe if you take it to inflation. But no, when he died in 1956, his estate was worth more than $84 million. That's so insane.
It's not that much money.
No, it's not that. That would be more than $500 million today. Stephen died 4 years later in 1960, also leaving behind a crazy fortune. So they spent the last half of their lives not speaking to each other over, essentially, art.
I mean, it literally was art.
So crazy.
I don't know why you say essentially.
That was my story. It is very long. I skipped some parts, but I loved it.
That was a fascinating story that I've never heard.
It's so insane.
Makes me want to go to the Baseball Hall of Fame.
No, it does not. And now we get to talk about them some more at the Petty Roundtable.
I have ideas. I might have already used my best one, but
That was a very good idea.
we'll see what I can come up with.
All right, let's go. Well, we're here.
We made it.
I gave
Barely.
you a lot of detail.
You did.
And then I gave you even more details.
And then when I didn't want any more, you found some more and you gave them to me.
I did.
Not to mention all the details while we were walking over here.
I know. This family, but you have to admit that this is like almost an unbelievable story. Like if you were watching a show about this, you'd be like, no, because of all those extra details I gave you while we were walking over here.
There was literally $85 million worth of details in this story.
There was. But it's all so fascinating.
It
is fascinating how much of the Petty just structured their entire lives.
They lived around it.
They did.
And the poster child for the Petty, while they were both kind of petty towards each other, Sterling obviously was the worst.
He was the worst. I didn't even get to the part in my story of how he donated a bunch of stuff in Cooperstown in his mom's name so that even though he was moving out of Cooperstown, his brothers would still have to walk around and see his name on all the buildings.
It's funny you mention that because he is such a butthead.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave everyone else the pettiness and he got it, but not really.
Yeah, not as bad.
So this is going to be Steven's time to shine.
Okay.
And he's going to be able to get Sterling back.
All right. What could he have done?
So Sterling is not a fan of Susan in the slightest.
He is not.
Didn't like that she was allegedly running his life. She got ugly.
She got ugly. I mean, I feel like the feeling was mutual between them. They definitely did not like each other.
But he definitely had a strong disdain for her.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're going to do is we are going to go back in our time machine that we mention quite often, the one we've used in almost all of our episodes.
Well, that's because we need to go back and help people get their own petty revenge.
Well, that's what we're going to do here. So Stephen, we are going to go back and tell him, basically instruct him that twice a year, once every 6 months, he has to get a painting commissioned of Susan. However it comes out, it's going to be a picture of her. She can make it a glamour shot picture, whatever she wants.
Glamour shot.
And these pictures are going to be delivered by whatever delivery service they have back then. If we have to start one, we will. They're going to be delivered to Stephen at his front door. They're going to knock on the door and say, Sterling, we've got your painting for you this quarter. And they're going to be all of Susan. And on these walls that he wanted all these pictures is going to be nothing but pictures of Susan that he has to look at every day of his life. And he's going to be able to see her age over the years. And then he can really write in detail about how ugly she is.
She's gotten uglier over the years.
And then he'll at least have some basis for it. And maybe he'll have some proof. And be like, hey, look, come on.
That would have been really funny, especially if they had commissioned. He had a couple modern artists who were like his favorite artists of the time.
Mm-hmm.
If they had commissioned these specific artists to paint them, because then he would have been like, oh, he would have wanted to take them because they're his favorite artists, but it's of his most hated sister-in-law.
So that would have been a detail that would have made this a lot better, and you added it in. So his favorite artist, once every 6 months, have to paint a picture of Susan, deliver it to his house, and he is hanging them in his house, never to be able to take them down, never to sell the house, never move out of the house. He is there till he dies.
That is awesome.
That would pay him back for all the petty that he gave the rest of his family.
It would have. I like it.
I don't know how Susan would feel about it.
I think she probably would have hated it, but also
loved it.
Yes, because she would have known that it was annoying him. And so she would have sat for
I feel
said
like
paintings.
everybody wins in that situation.
They really do.
Because I think even Sterling
awesome.
could just sit there and look at how much he hates her, so he gets something out of it.
He would have inspiration for his diary that he loved to write with in great disdain.
He almost would have to keep a separate Susan diary, too. Just to write about Susan. Dear diary, it's me,
You already know
Sterling.
who I'm writing about.
I got another painting of Susan today.
She has 4 more wrinkles on the right side of her face.
I'm hoping for 4 more on the left side with the next 6-month painting.
I'm so fortunate that my wife has aged so much better. Even though she's way younger than
I really hope she
Jesus.
dies soon because I'm tired of these paintings. More later, XOXO, Sterling.
Oh my God. I love it.
That's the best I can do.
I think that's pretty awesome. You always come up with good ones. And that
don't like how, not that this one was an easy one to think of, but I don't like how they're getting easier for me to think about, and they're getting pettier and pettier. I don't like that. You almost should be fearful of what's going to happen if we keep doing this.
Nah, I'm not worried.
Yeah, I guess you're probably learning the same things I am, so
yeah,
it'll be an even draw. And then people have a podcast about us.
These two started out with good intentions with their podcast about petty through history.
But boy, did they learn petty.
Oh, my God. Well, that's our story. That's our episode.
Definitely was a good one I've never heard. I don't think a lot of people have heard that one. Maybe people that live in Cooperstown or in the art world.
It's in, like in certain circles, I guarantee you. And if you live in Cooperstown, you do, because the whole town is kind of still preserved. It hasn't really like grown much because they're preserving it like the way that the Clarks had it. Mm-hmm. And it's like a little bit of a controversy up there as well.
Do you think the Clarks ever went to your old hometown?
I don't know.
Ate dinner there?
I would not be surprised if they would maybe go over to Afton to see the petty goings on at their town hall meetings. Who knows?
Maybe that's
they
where
had
they learned
friends
it from.
in Afton. Maybe. I mean, it's all like right around there. Of course, they refused to use cars. When cars came around, they still used horse and buggy because they did not like cars.
Just something to think about.
It really is. But anyway, that's
but
our
anyway,
story.
let's end this.
I liked it. Let's. And we're going to do what we've been doing because I like it. We're just going to tell them about Twitter and our website because it's all they need.
It really is.
All the
what
rest
more
of the
do
information
you
is there.
need? A Twitter account, a web browser to go to letstalkpetty.com.
Yep.
Let's Talk Petty
The Twitter
Pod.
account. Yeah. Petty Talk Pod.
Petty
for
Talk
Twitter.
Pod.
Petty Talk Pod.
I don't
for
even
Twitter.
remember my own Twitter name.
I don't either. I always have to look it up. So that's on both of us.
But you can do anything you want to on our website. And please, 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 please,
Double
one more
please?
please.
Pretty please?
Tell someone about our podcast. Share it with them. Share a story. We've got lots of different people now. Lots of different time periods that we've told stories about.
Yep.
You're
Petty
going
through
to
history.
find somebody that likes one of our stories at one point throughout
Yes.
history.
Because not only do you learn history, but you learn it in a fun way that makes you remember it. So for those of you who hate history,
Me.
like Andrew, at least you get some fun out of it. And then there's me who loves history and wants all the deets. So you get both of the best worlds.
You really do.
You do. All right. Well, that's our episode. Until next week when you tell the story, we will
have
see you
a good
then.
one.
You do.
Hopefully,
I don't know what it is because I won't let you tell me.
Hopefully everyone enjoys it.
All right. We'll see you then.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Please be sure and give our show a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. And be sure to follow and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.